So 9 years ago, I made a video trying to help the controller user base of FF14 on how to set up the gamepad, how to put your cross hotbar in a much more palatable fashion, configure it in a way that's easier to use, and hopefully mitigate misinputs. And well, in those 9 years, Square has made a lot of good steps in the right direction to try and give controller users more adaptability to keep up with keyboard and mouse users. They still haven't done enough. And with Dawntrail fast approaching, I honestly believe the button bloat issue is going to become worse, especially for controller users. So I decided now that we're going to have a new set of brothers and sisters from the Xbox possibly joining us. I am going to remake the 2014 video, but with my current configuration, answer a couple of questions I've had during those 9 years. So, yeah, let's get to it. I will be showing you my tank setup, a healer setup, a DPS, and a ranged DPS, and then I will go into the PvP area and show you basically how I tackle most of my PvP hotbars. So, as it was 9 years ago, honestly, not much in that regard has changed. I've kept my right heavy configuration for buttons. I put my rotation and I put the execution heavy buttons on the right side because I'm right-handed and I had a left hand injury during Heaven's Ward and Stormblood that only got better close to Shadowbringers. So I had to adapt, and with the help of a couple of foot pedals, I was able to still play the game and raid and all of that. But my hotbar has always been right side heavy. So, looking at my hotbar, I always have my rotation here on the right side. Important buttons also on the right side. Execution heavy buttons also here on the right side. And stuff that you only press once in a while on the left side. On my second hotbar, I always have stuff related to AoEs, miscellaneous buffs, and if I hold down both triggers, I have all of my off GCDs in one place, and obviously my ranged weapon skill always in the same button. My configuration tries to maintain the consistency that the important button is always in the same place, LB is always in the same place, and the rotation is always in the same place. So before I switch classes, I'm going to show you what my character configuration looks like. This is my display for normal hotbars. As you can see, I am using a lot of normal hotbars to hold other buttons that I might use. These I use mostly on PC because I have a mouse on PC, and on the PS5 the virtual mouse kinda helps, but not really. But these are buttons I only press once in a while and they don't affect combat at all. So I just put all of them here, and the mount for when I'm just chilling. Here I have my shared hotbars. I share always, when it comes to the keyboard and mouse hotbars, I always share hotbar 2, 8, 9, and 10, which is where I put all of these buttons. They're on the top right. And the buttons for crafters and gatherers will be here where I have the buffs for these classes. So this is how I configure my shared settings. So for the cross hotbar, I've kept most of the same configurations as the 2014 video. I tried at some point to implement the W cross hotbar, but I absolutely hate how it involves double inputting the trigger to access the second layer of cross hotbars, and it caused me to clip a lot of double weaves, which dropped my performance, and overall it was just an awful time. So I kind of stopped trying to implement the cross hotbar, the W cross hotbar in my gameplay. This is where most of the magic happens. For PvE, I have the expanded controls on, with both of the trigger setups pointing to another hotbar that is not shared and that I only use via the expanded controls. Since I don't use the double cross hotbar, most of my triggers and double taps are very lenient and they always point to the same place. So by doing this configuration, I can maintain a high level of gameplay while still having access to 8 buttons that are always useful, the extra 8 buttons, where most of my off global cooldowns are in most of my classes. For PvE, I kept most of the same configuration. I think a few numbers might have changed, but don't quote me on that. Everything should still be the same because I've been using this setup for a decade now, which is crazy to think. So, same logic. When my weapon is drawn, I only have access to hotbar 1 and 2, and when I sheath my weapon, I have access to hotbar 1 and 8. If I don't think I'll be going into combat, I can just disable 1. Once I press R1, it will go straight to 8, and it will never leave 8 by mashing R1. But since I do a lot of Eureka and a lot of open world content, I like having the option of having hotbar 1 always enabled. That way I can just swap between 1 and 8, and when I unsheath my weapon with L1 and R1, I have access to 1 and 2, which makes it easier for me to play one-handed because of my injury, not because of the cat girls. But the same logic applies to all of my classes. So before we go on to the PvP side of things, I'm going to show you my main, Warrior. Same logic. The 1-2-3 and the 1-2-4 combo are on the right side. Since Warrior doesn't have as much bloat as Paladin and Dark Knight, and especially Gunbreaker, it's quite easy to set up most of your combat stuff on hotbar 1. Have your hotbar 2 for AoE related combat, and then when you hold down both triggers, you have access to all of your off-global cooldowns. This logic will still maintain when I go to Samurai. 1-2-3, the other 1-2-3, and 1-2 are right side. Everything else over here, but also, right side heavy. And all the off global cooldowns are here. Most of my cooldowns are always displayed on the right hand side by using the other hotbars, which if I show you my HUD layout, it's hotbar 5 and hotbar 7. As I mentioned previously. So if we go here to my hotbar number 2, AoE combat, same logic. If we go to White Mage, which is the only healer I have the brain power to play, it's kind of the same logic. Most of my single target spells and important cooldowns are on the right side. AoE heals or AoE buttons are always here on the left side. And then, DPS buffs, swift cast rays, always very close. But the big difference with healers is I put my AoE and my single target DPS on the triggers. It's easier for me to hold down both triggers and press glare or stone as a healer, and it's just how I got used to playing. But you can tell how often I play healers because I still have Fluid Aura in my hotbar, so, you know, it's not very often I get to play healer outside of PvP. Trust me, nobody wants that. And for range DPS, most of the times I play Black Mage. Same thing, most of my rotation right side heavy, hold down both triggers, get a bunch of miscellaneous off GCDs. It's basically the same logic across all of my classes. And, you know, crafters and gatherers, everything is on the same button, because if they're not shared, then it's just easy to set up everything together. Now, if we go to the Wolf's Den, which will give me access to my PvP hotbar, obviously my PvE stuff isn't going to work anymore, but we can still go and change manually. So in PvP I often play like something like Dragoon, and the logic remains the same. Triangle or Y on the Xbox is my main rotation. Other important buttons on the right. You know, things that are less common go here on the left. I don't really use them because they're on the left side. All of the recovery related skills, LB, sprint, and other miscellaneous buttons permeating the right side, and that's basically all the button bloat that PvP provides. And then I just put the quick chat and old skills still here. Same logic for Paladin, which is another class I like to play in PvP. Left side is basically cover macros for all other 4 members of the fight. Important buttons on the right, other important buttons on the right, recovery on the left. Trying to maintain that consistency of L being always in the same button, recovering always in the same button. There's really not much to add there, so if you want to see my settings once more, right here, expanded controls, only one hotbar because in PvP I don't really need more than one hotbar. Just goes to show what could be achieved if Square implemented similar style of button bloat avoidance in PvE, but you know, combat would be kind of boring that way. But yeah, there's really not much to say because not a whole lot has changed since these past 9 years. I will now show you what my HUD looks like in the HUD layout. This is basically my HUD with the hotbars and the macros right here on this hotbar. Hotbar 2 will make hotbar 1, 4, 9, 10, 8 appear. I can also share the macros. Should be in the description. And there's really not a whole lot else to cover. Not much has changed for us controller players. And if you have access to add-ons and plugins on PC, there's a lot you can do with the setup to improve it. But because I'm mostly a PS5 player, I can't use add-ons. So yeah, this is the best setup that I could come up with to avoid as much of the button bloat as possible. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment. And yeah, that's it. See you in another 9 years.